Welcome to another Cloud and Clear episode. I'm your host, Rocky Giglio, Global Director of Security at SADA. And on with me today is Eric Foster. Eric, you're Vice President of Product, right? Do I have that right at Stairwell?
I lead a couple different functions at Stairwell. I like to jump them together as business development. I'm responsible for what we call our go-to-market team ultimately, which comprises business development, sales, marketing. I help with product strategy. I lead our threat research team. Ultimately, any other duties as assigned, janitorial, you name it.
That sounds familiar. Yeah. The go-to-market motion is a lot of fun, man, and so it's good to be on with a fellow go-to-market nerd who's making things happen. Well, hey, man. But before we jump into more of the episode, give our audience just an intro to Stairwell. Kind of what birthed this product, this space. What are the needs that you guys saw and are trying to address?
So, Stairwell, we are a cybersecurity solution that is focused on giving cybersecurity teams or giving organizations basically cybersecurity superpowers. The idea is that we were founded by a team that has been trying to do cyber defense and cyber response for many, many years. And I think like any good startup, it's the age-old question of building a product that scratches your own itch, that solves your own problem, if you will. And this is exactly what we've done with Stairwell. The company was founded by the great Mike Wysek, who is our CEO and who was quite literally one of the linchpins of catching one of the earliest and most publicized nation state attacks when he worked at Google. So, starting with Mike, basically a team of people that he's built around him who have been fighting the good fight and trying to defend organizations and help other organizations detect and stop attacks faster and better. Stairwell was built out of a true need and a true problem set of, as good as today's cybersecurity tools and solutions are, we believe that, as cliche as it is, there has to be a better way. No matter how much organizations have historically invested in cybersecurity tools or platforms or even people, attacks have still gotten through. Unknown threats are still, breaking organizations open every day, as we've seen just constantly on the news. And Stairwell was quite literally built to solve a couple unsolved, very hard problems in cybersecurity. What we ultimately do is help defenders or help organizations detect and stop attacks faster. We find unknown threats, most specifically malware and malware variants, that traditional tools and controls have been missing. So, especially like today, you see just ransomware event after ransomware event. Stairwell was very literally purpose built to try to find the type of advanced attacks that are bypassing those other security controls, because those organizations that are getting hit with wide scale ransomware, they weren't, not doing the basics of cybersecurity. They were using, industry standard, industry normative tools, but the bad guys have figured out how to get around our sort of current approach to defense. And Stairwell was built to solve that problem effectively, to try to, as much as possible. I would say there's never a silver bullet in cybersecurity, but we were purpose built to kind of find that last percentage of threats that are bypassing other controls, and we're really, really good at it.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, right? I think everybody's aware. If you're not aware, I guess you live under a rock. That the attacks are coming hot and heavy. They're advanced, right? Even the attackers are leveraging AI. They're well funded nation state actors. So it's not the old days where like, hey, put a SIM in and you'll catch some bad behavior in there and some anomalies here and there, and you'll be good to go, right? I mean, that's kind of where cybersecurity started, was in that realm of, let's just start gathering some logs and looking for bad behavior and we'll catch it eventually. No big deal. Now we're at the like, hey, these are going to be 0 day attacks. They're going to be unique. They're going to look for vulnerabilities, easy paths in, or they're going to take the phishing route, right? And all of a sudden, you've got just this disastrous, business altering event on your hands, and that just didn't used to be the case. I mean, not, I mean, I guess it's been that way for a while. Like, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, the good old days, right? Um, but I think you highlight a couple things, right? One, we still have this problem of it takes way too long to know something happened, right? And then that the bad guys are looking for unique ways, and so we need a better way to really bring that to the surface. So talk a little bit more about that. Like, what is it that Stairwell is really doing? I know there's some elements of file detection and ransomware protection. So talk a little bit about that. Like, how does our audience? What's different for the audience?
The ultimate idea, kind of the ultimate hypothesis behind Stairwell in the beginning, is I see it as we are the third platform shift in cybersecurity effectively. The very old days of cybersecurity, as you talked about, we were primarily in a signature based sort of antivirus world, right? In the early days, right? Like you had a bunch of signature based detections. And most specifically, all of our detections were kind of built off of logs and events. Like you say, it's like we have to look at the logs and the alerts that are coming off of our systems. But we realized really quickly that security was a big data problem kind of from the beginning. And, so many organizations struggle with even trying to get all of their logs and events in one place and being able to analyze those. And then you had the second platform shift that came along, the endpoint detection and response, or the EDR vendors. They took it out of the log and event and signature basis and went to primarily behavioral based detections. We're going to look at the behavior on a system. Stairwell, from lessons learned in really kind of solving some aspects of big data security previously with previous companies, took lessons out of that and applied them, kind of the combination of, we figured out how to handle incredibly large data at scale, we figured out how to process it very effectively, and we figured out how to intelligently apply artificial intelligence, really machine learning at scale to that big data problem. And the intersection of those lets us kind of open up a third platform shift, which for us is, instead of looking at just logs and events, or instead of just looking at behavior, we're able to actually collect and analyze the files themselves where the bad things ultimately happen. So the analogy a lot of people use, I don't love it, it's not perfect, but it gives you kind of an assumption, is we're like a private data lake, a private security data lake, a private SIM, if you will, for your files in your organization. And the idea is, with that, we're able to look back in time to say, this is what was running or executed or used by a bad guy on a system at any point in time. It gives us a really incredible lens to not only find threats that bypass other controls, but so much of security today, you kind of alluded to, is after the fact, right? A bad thing happens, we always like to say right of boom or left of boom is a great sort of analogy of, right? Like if you're able to do something predictive, preventative, it's left of boom, and then boom happens, and then you're operating right of boom. And the idea is that so much of security today falls into that detection and response side, that is, after something bad has already happened, we're becoming aware of it and we're trying to go remediate it or ameliorate it. And the idea of Stairwell was, if we have all the files, we can do a level of analysis that is absolutely unprecedented, including a really incredible level of AI driven machine learning. We basically have built at the core of Stairwell a giant neural network that is trying to do kind of the same expert systems that you would get if you called in a world-class incident response firm and set them across your network for 2 to 3 weeks looking at any individualized threat or any individualized file. Except we do that for every file in your organization. So we're kind of a time machine where we're compressing a 3-week multi-consultant engagement into an automated process that runs in 3 seconds, that runs thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of times a day. So, what we end up being really good at doing is finding the unknown malware and the unknown variants of malware that bad guys are using to conduct ransomware attacks or to conduct the latest Citrix CVE, exploits was a great example. We've got some blog posts that we caught some very novel attacks using that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, almost every attack in an organization has some sort of file component. Either the bad guys are dropping malware or they're using files that are already on the system, things like PowerShell or scripts or scripting capabilities, or they're leaving files, things like web shells and artifacts behind. And Stairwell is able to collect all of those and apply an incredible level of automated analysis. And it all ultimately rolls up to one great use case, which is we are really good at telling organizations in an instant if they're affected by any threat that comes out. So this, I talked at the beginning there, the personal pain point, in my previous life, building one of the largest and fastest growing managed detection and response companies, this was the ultimate reason that almost every organization called me, is they wanted someone who was watching your back saying, hey, this giant threat just came out, the new Citrix CVE, or, going back to like Log4j or SolarWinds or, whatever. Those big things came out and my phone would blow up, my sock would blow up because every customer wanted to know, hey, there's this new big thing out there. Are you aware of it? Are you detecting it? Are we affected by it? And the pace of those things is just ever growing and ever scaling. And so we built a solution to automate answering that question for companies and just automate that entire process. So we monitor every open source released piece of threat intelligence from essentially all the vendors, you name it, both the commercial vendors, the open source guys, and the government sources, great people like CISA who are doing incredible work in this space, or MITRE. The idea is the moment one of them release some new piece of threat intelligence. We just saw a release today from CISA related to Lockbit ransomware, for example. Stairwell customers, within literally minutes of CISA hitting publish on that new Lockbit ransomware, they had an authoritative answer that told them either, yes, I have these new indicators for this Lockbit in my organization. And not just are they there today, were they there 6 months ago or a year ago or 2 years ago, if I was a Stairwell customer 2 years ago, knowing that these guys were in my environment or that they're doing these things, even in the past, is very impactful. So, or the other side, and the risk management guys, the auditors, the regulators really like this, is we could give you an authoritative answer. Unlike a log or event based approach, we're actually able to tell companies, no, you are conclusively not affected by this threat. And this threat has never been in your environment since you've become a Stairwell customer. So actually providing evidence of absence of threats has become very interesting to some of our risk customers.
The challenge, I think you spelled out the challenge well, which is there's just so much coming at us. How do you really know whether you did the right things or you have the right protections in place? How do you know if you've been exposed or not exposed? Right, the ongoing answer, or the ongoing question, not answer, of have we been exposed and how long has the attacker been in here? And just having that growing understanding and authority there is such a key component. Like, still negative unemployment in cyber. Everybody knows that, right? I think the latest stat was like there's 3 million open jobs in cyber. Uh, okay, well, how do we make those folks more effective? Let's say you filled all those positions tomorrow. They're going to be brand new folks, green to this field. They don't really know what they're looking at, right? Even if they're sitting in the chair looking at the logs, there's just still so much they're not going to know. And then what they didn't know yesterday is just, it's just exponentially getting harder and harder to catch up, because tomorrow there's 1,000 new things and then there's 1,000 more after that. And who knows how much faster that's going to get now with all the advent of AI and all that stuff, right? So there really is a need for, like, what did my environment look like 12 months ago, 12 days ago? What has changed, and is any of that bad, right? Is any of that exposing me to these risks? I can see that being super interesting to, like, cyber insurers. Have you guys done any work there, and kind of what's the impact been for your customers as they start thinking about cyber risk and those types of things?
We've had some really great early partnerships with a couple forward-leaning insurers who are, I think that's a space that is very interestingly ripe for disruption. I think there are a couple interesting startups who are kind of moving in that direction to try to do a better job, and some leading existing companies that are trying to do a better job of accurately managing and measuring cyber risk inside their customers. And so, yeah, that's been a nothing I can talk about publicly, unfortunately, but something. It's a very insightful question. I think our customer base has been, I think the traditional early adopters and forward thinkers in cybersecurity. It kind of goes back to the classic Willie Sutton line of, why you robbed the banks. That's because that's where the money is, right? It's the same thing in cyber, right? The people who invest in cyber tend to be the people who have something really strong to lose. Those that are highly regulated. Although obviously, and you guys know well, SADA does a fantastic job in digital transformation across all industries, and it's no longer just financial services and healthcare and retail that are so heavily focused on this. Cybersecurity has become a top issue for every company, not just with the recent SEC type rulings around making cybersecurity formally a board issue and a board responsibility, but just, obviously ransomware actors do a great job of disrupting business operations across any kind of business, critical infrastructure, not just, but any operational business that can't afford to have their computers or their systems go down. So um, we've been really fortunate to help a number of organizations with some really interesting things. In just the short time that we've been in the market, we've been able to successfully. I talked about the Citrix CVE catch that you can read about more on our website on stairwell.com. But we've helped catch novel ransomware inside of major household companies that you would absolutely know the name of, and obviously client confidentiality, one of the most important things. But it feels really good, quite honestly. We've been in a circumstance for a long time, fighting the good fight in cybersecurity, trying to punch the bad guys in the nose. And quite frankly, there's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of, one of the reasons you touched on, I think there's a lot of open positions in cyber is because it is a true battle. You go into battle every day trying to protect your organization, trying to fight the good fight against the literal criminals who are trying to break into your enterprise. And it can be very disheartening. And I think one of the things we've tried to do is really glorify and celebrate the defender. We're in unfortunately in an industry that kind of seems to celebrate the attacker more than the defender, and we really have been formed to try to give those defenders more power, and quite literally all the way to what you would describe as superpowers, so that you can take an entry level analyst or take one person on your team and let them do the work of 10 people. You touched on it earlier, but literally hundreds and hundreds of these new threats come out a quarter. I think we tracked 480 what we call threat reports last quarter, and if you think about each of those, how many organizations have the ability to say, even for half of those 480, like standing up a team and going, here, let's spend hours or days looking into whether or not we're affected by this. What Stairwell can do for them is quite literally the equivalent of calling the best IR firm in the world, flying them in for 3 weeks times 480, and doing it in seconds instead of weeks. So it's that exponential transformation that AI brings, that automation brings, that is so powerful, that can ultimately so excited about it, helping organizations kind of go to the next level.
Yeah, I love it. It's what the Fair Institute calls those secondary costs, right? It's all of a sudden I've got my primary cost, which is the incident response stuff, which is already expensive, and then if there's 400 of those to get through this quarter, I mean, can't imagine next quarter and the quarter after that. And so, how do you ever get to a point? You can't hire enough incident responders to really dig into all of those, and so you're not going to. So yeah, I love what you guys are doing. Tell our customers, how do they get started, right? I mean, you've heard the story. man, there's so much Stairwell's doing here to really speed this up and give us this intelligence that we really everybody needs. How do they get started with Stairwell?
So, one, we're happy to extend to the listeners of the great Cloud and Clear here. We're big fans. Happy to extend to anybody who's hearing this, happy to do a free, no obligation proof of concept / proof of value for you. Mention that you heard us on here. No sales pressure, no anything else. Just literally will hook you up, will take you through what's effectively as if you'd called in a world-class firm for a compromise assessment of your entire environment. So at the end of that POC or POV, you get a comprehensive reporting that your auditors will love, or your risk management or your board will love, or your investors, depending on what stage you're in, to say, hey, look, we've taken a really comprehensive look at our cybersecurity profile. One of the best things, and big shout out to our partnership with SADA here, is Stairwell is available in the GCP marketplace. So one of the easiest ways to consume Stairwell, if you're already in Google Cloud, if you're not, you obviously should be. But if you aren't, if you are, Google Cloud Marketplace, search for Stairwell, and you can quite literally purchase or deploy it right through there. Stairwell has, we traditionally run on endpoints wherever those exist. So we've got a cloud-specific version that's coming out here before the end of the year. We've got a number of customers that use us in the cloud today, but as you know, coming out with an optimized install version for cloud. And one of the cool things that we're doing is releasing a Kubernetes optimized version here before the end of the year. So the idea is, it's very important to know what files went in, came out, executed, ran inside of a microservice or something like that when you're moving out past the traditional edges of operating systems. So long story short, look us up on stairwell.com, reach out on social media, anything else, and we're happy to give you a free, no obligation look. Big believers, the whole concept of the company is basically building the kind of products we always wanted to buy and selling them, taking them to market in the ways that we always wanted to consume them. So things like when you hit our website, you can get a no obligation demo without giving your email address or anything else. There's a comprehensive tour of the product on the website. Big believers in go to market, and I obviously love the whole challenge and concept of evangelizing a solution and taking it to market, but also believe that there are some really great ways to do it that you don't have to force it on people. Basically, if the product is amazing like we believe ours is, it in a lot of ways, just making it available and letting people try it is the best approach. So happy to do that with your listeners.
Love it. Thanks, Eric. Yeah. So check it out. Check them out at stairwell.com. Reach out to me or Eric. We're happy to answer questions. And love what you guys are doing. This is such a needed thing, especially today, with just how fast all of this stuff is moving and the need to really protect ourselves. So having that intelligence across your file landscape is super important. And just love what you're doing. So Eric, thanks for joining me today. Good to have you on the show, and look forward to talking some more in the future.
Yeah, Rocky, great to see you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics. And don't forget to connect with us on Twitter at Cloud and Clear and our website, sada.com. Be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app.